Welcome to the Under One Roof Landlord and Letting Agent webinar series, made possible through the generous funding of the Safe Deposit Scotland Charitable Trust. The question and answer session will start momentarily. For those who are joining us for the first time, Under One Roof is a free, independent service that supports landlords, letting agents, owner-occupiers, factors, local authority housing officers, and others throughout the sector with issues around owning and maintaining a tenement flat in Scotland. Last year, through funding from Safe Deposit Scotland Charitable Trust, the Scottish Government, and local authorities throughout Scotland, we attained charity status, which has enabled us to hire a full-time staff dedicated to working with landlords and owner-occupiers of tenement flats and those that support them. In the coming months and years, Under One Roof will be increasing the information available on our website, our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram accounts, and through our monthly newsletter. We encourage you to share information we send out with those in your building or in your sector to help us improve the quality of tenement flats in Scotland. Today's question and answer webinar will last 1 hour, with a short comfort break around the halfway mark. We encourage you to post your questions and comments into the chat box at the bottom of your screen. When asking a question, please provide your first name and a brief description of the issue you'd like to raise. If you'd like to appear on screen and ask your question directly, rather than have us read it out, please let us know. If we run out of time before your question is answered, please drop us an email with your question or join us for the next question and answer session. Thanks for joining us. Let's begin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to everyone joining us today for our, I believe it's now our third question and answer session with Under One Roof. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming along today. We've tried a little different time this time. We're going to go for a lunchtime to see if that would be a better time for people to join us. So and ask their questions. We've gotten a lot of questions in actually over the last few weeks or so and the last few days. So we've got some really interesting ones I think will be fascinating to go through and hopefully get a chance for you to ask some questions as well. So I'm going to first introduce the other hosts for today who are going to be answering those questions. My name is Mike Heffron. As I said in the introduction, I'm the Chief Executive Under One Roof. And I'm joined here today by Annie Flint. Annie is a housing consultant and researcher. She's the co-author of the Tenement Handbook, Common Repair, Common Sense, and a number of other guides for owners, community organizations, and professionals. Welcome, Annie. Oh, I think we've lost her sound. You still there, Annie?
Am I back on now? Yeah.
There you go. Yep. All set.
Great. Okay, that's two of us working the controls at once, I think. Hello, everybody. Yes, glad to be here again.
And thanks, Annie. We've also got Paul Barnum. Welcome, Paul.
Hello, and glad to be back.
Yep.
Can be any help?
Paul has almost 30 years experience as an architect in conservation, refurbishment, and restoration work, as well as new build housing, community buildings, and commercial projects. And has done a number of work in sustainable design as well. So yes, well, thanks for both joining us for the lunchtime Q&A. We've got a number of questions, and I think what we'll do is just get right to it. So the first question that we've gotten in is from Hazel. Now, Hazel has said that there's a large tree at the back of a neighboring tenement which has never been pruned, and that tree is situated right on the border, but most of the large branches overhang onto our land, she says. Our gutters are constantly getting blocked with leaves, and it also blocks our daylight. Now, I've reported this last October to the Factor for their building. They sent some companies out to quote, and since then they've not heard back, and despite being chased. And they haven't written to the owners of the tenement with any of the quotes. They say that they've got too much going on. So there's two questions in from Hazel. One is, are they within their rights in their building, which is self-factored, to ask them to pay for our charges to clear our gutter until they get the tree pruned or removed? So this is the Factor from next door. And who do you report a neighboring Factor to when they don't carry out their duties? Who'd like to take that one on first?
Okay, well, let's start on the tree. I think anywhere that you've got a property which is near trees, the leaves will blow and they will get into the gutters everywhere in the vicinity. So I don't think you can really say you can blame just that one tree or ask the owners of that tree to pay to have the leaves taken out of the gutters in your property. What you can do on your own count is cut back the branches as far as the boundary wall. And that is something which you can do, and you have rights because they're growing into your property. So that is how I would deal with the trees. And of course, everyone has got to get their gutters cleaned annually. I mean, there's so much bruck that gets into the gutters of properties, whether it's from pigeons pooing to leaves. There is always a lot of dirt in gutters. Get them cleaned annually, even if you don't have trees nearby. So I don't really think you can pass on the cost to your neighbours. But I say you could take down the branches as far as the boundary if you weren't getting any action. Factors not acting within time when you're not the direct client. I've never had that question before. I think what you should try and do is just use the factors complaints procedure and just start going through it. So start writing to them and saying, why haven't you done anything? And when they come back to you with a reason or don't come back to you with any kind of reason, then escalate within their own complaints procedure so that you get oversight, preferably at director level. And if you still don't get satisfaction from that, then you're going to the first tier tribunal. And this is all covered in one of the Under One Roof articles about complaining about your factor. So that's the answer I would give. I'm not sure if Paul's got any other thoughts about trees and leaves and gutter cleaning.
Exactly what you were saying about cleaning gutters, and it's leaves that are there, but you can't tell what tree they've come from unless it's a very unique situation where that's the only tree for a long, long way around. But no, I think the point is that you could never get anyone to enforce that condition, and someone would always argue against it if it was a neighbouring property. And yes, you should be getting your gutters cleaned regularly. As for the trees, there's just one issue that occurs to me. If it's a conservation area, then that tree would be covered by the provisions of that conservation area, in that certainly for the removal of the tree, it would be some consent would be required. It's equivalent to a tree preservation order. Any tree that's bigger than, it's quite small, I think it's 100 millimeters, so anything bigger than 4 inches. So Hazel doesn't say where it is the tenement is, but if it's a conservation area, that's just another hurdle to go through. But yes, certainly it was my understanding that you cut back a tree to the boundary, within, again, the provision that you don't want to destabilize the tree, so that by cutting off all the branches on one side, it becomes lopsided the other way, that could put a strain on the roots, and then you could end up with a bigger problem if the tree was to remain. I mean, if the tree wasn't cut back on the other side. That's where you would need, if it's a seriously big tree as it sounds, then any pruning would need to be done by a specialist, by a proper accredited tree surgeon.
And,
Thanks, Paul.
There is also a tree pruning season, Mike. Now is the time to get started on it. Once you get to sort of birds nesting, then you can't do tree work. So I think between now and about the end of March, my recollection is the time for action.
Great. Thanks, Hazel, for the question. We'll move right on to another one. This is, it's a short one, but it may not be straightforward. So this is a question around a Juliet balcony on a development based out in Troon. They have a question around whether or not, in terms of factoring maintenance, whether or not a balcony is considered individual or common in terms of maintenance. And they have checked their title deeds, and it is silent on the subject.
So a Juliet balcony, in my understanding of it, is a small balcony, which is really just going, I mean, it's almost like railings across the window, isn't it? Isn't it, Paul? Is that not what we...
My understanding, if that's what they're saying, it's not a balcony that is a structural projection from from the face of the building. I can see where it's coming from. That if it's something that is projecting, if it's sort of balcony you could step out onto, that would be dependent on the wall and taking its support off the. If it's just within the wall, it is more like a tall window with a safety barrier across it.
Yeah. I mean, my feel is that this is probably going to be an individual repair.
However, it could be that the balcony itself, I'm thinking of that if it's something it's a metal balcony that needs to be repainted from time to time, and that's maybe where the question's coming from, that the repainting of that balcony could be part of the common repairs going in with guttering. I know flats where that's happening at the moment, where they're retirement flats, but some of them have got Juliet balconies, and they are being repainted as part of the common, as part of this sort of cyclical repairs, rather than the windows, which are private to each of the flats in that development. So it is possible that there's that distinction.
Yeah, I just suspect that this is probably going to be an individual responsibility, though. I think probably it's going to go along with windows as being individual. If your title deeds say that windows are common, occasionally it happens, then I think you would treat this as being part of the window itself. That's what my thought would be about
if
this.
the Juliet balcony is separate from if the balcony is likely to be separate from the window. The window is something that can be replaced without replacing the balcony, and the balcony is fixed to that. Say, imagining it's brickwork or whatever the building sliding that's fixed on either side of the window, not fixed to the window. Then I think it might be more complicated, and I think I could see this becoming something where they would need to. I don't know how the building's managed. I don't know if it's something that it might be an issue that's affecting more than one property in the building, or whether it's just a feature balcony that's only present in this flat and the other properties in the building don't have that feature. Those are all things which could affect, because I think if you've got a whole building and all of these effectively all these balustrades have got paint peeling off them, and everyone saying, well, it's not my responsibility, or some people are taking it on board and painting it themselves, then whoever manages the building or the other owners are likely to be, someone's going to be concerned when it comes to selling their flat or whatever, about how the thing is looking. So, and I'm guessing it's something, that's how the question has arisen. You've got you've got a marine environment, a lot of salt spray in the air, which would be attacking any paintwork, and it could be something that requires maintenance more frequently than somewhere that's in a less exposed location.
And it is a property factor that has asked the question as well, if that gives some context to where the question is coming from. They are under they are proceeding prior to us asking the question, they're proceeding as if this would be a common repair. But they're asking us that's why they've gotten in touch to ask if there's any way to clarify that.
It's tricky when the title deeds just don't cover everything that's there. I mean, I think I would say as well, by the time you chop up the costs between all the different owners, you're really not talking about that much. It's just some owners will feel a bit righteous about it in being charged, even if it's a penny more than they need to, as you know. But if you're dealing with all of the Juliet balconies, if they're all in the same condition and all need to be dealt with, and every flat has got one, there's not much difference between treating them all as individual or common, really, is there?
Great. Well, thanks very much for that. Let's see. We'll go on to another question here. We've got. Let's see. Let's pull out another one. We've got, someone that has, there have been numerous reports to the factor made about one of the flats in a property up on the third floor. And there's a number of disrepair issues. The landing patio doors are broken, remain constantly open. The carpet is getting wet. The building will become, and they worry the building will become cold and the floor will be damaged. However, when the factors are contacted, the property manager is saying that they will come out in a few weeks' time but haven't come out yet. And I believe that this has been reported a few times by other neighbors as well. And they're having, basically, I think what they're doing is like, what can they do to pressure their factor to come out and deal with the issue?
Clarify this then, Mike. I was just trying to find the question in the Q&A, but this is
this question is not in the Q&A. I've got a longer list than that's in the Q&A. But this is someone though is asking is basically they've asked their factor to deal with an issue of somebody up in their building, and the factor has not acted, and it's been a month, and they're worried that the continued lack of action by the factor is causing damage to the building that they'll end up having to pay for through common repairs.
And they aren't the owner of this flat.
They are an owner of a different flat, yeah.
They're a different flat.
Yeah, I think I was just trying to clarify whether it's the owner of that flat who has left the patio window open. And is the owner of that flat not around?
Oh, I see. No, yeah, I think so.
That's what I'm trying to ascertain.
Yes. Yes, you're right. No, it's actually, I think that they're trying to get, yes, sorry, I was a bit unclear. They're trying to get their repair done on their property. Yeah.
So I'm still not clear. So, but we've got
that's what I think Annie's asked the same question that I was asking, that the owner is saying it's my property on the 3rd floor, but is it, there've been numerous reports to the factor made about my property on the 3rd floor. The landing patio doors are broken and remain constantly open. Now, I'm assuming from the next paragraph that they aren't, the person that's writing this isn't the owner of the flat on the 3rd floor, and that they're complaining about the property on the 3rd floor, and that they're on one of the presumably lower floors, possibly the floor immediately below that. I'm guessing.
Yeah, I believe that's right. Unfortunately, that's all the information I've got. So I'm just sort of working with the question we've got.
Because if it's their flat, it's really their responsibility to make sure it's watertight.
Mm-hmm.
But so assuming that's not the case, they're asking the question, their factor hasn't really acted upon this request, which might not be the factor's responsibility, because it's the owner's responsibility to do anything to make good. It's the owner to give them access in the first place. So the owner hasn't made their flat watertight, and it's causing problems for the building as a whole and the other owners in the building. And they're asking what can they do in that situation? And the factors haven't really acted upon it.
Yeah.
And what's the next step really?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just trying to go through in my mind what the rules are about access are, and if you cannot get hold of the owner by giving them due notice, whether you can actually effect entry into the flat to resolve the problem. I think it would need to be coming up to it being an emergency repair, though, on that kind of basis. And I think if that individual has been neglectful to leave their door open, then I think it's probably going to be their responsibility to fix things, providing you can get hold of that owner. And often the factor won't actually act in these individual cases. I think what you could do is just keep going on at the factor to see if they can, get hold of that individual. The factor should have their contact details.
The other thing that is unfortunate sometimes is that factors will, and possibly that they have to follow this line. They won't give out the contact details for other owners because of how they view the data protection legislation to work, and so the factor will know who acts on behalf of the owners collectively. Isn't under an obligation to give details to the other owners, but therefore, to my mind, has a responsibility to do everything on behalf of the other owners, and that's really maybe the case that needs to be made to the factors.
Yeah. I mean, I think what we're both saying is get the factor to keep chasing the owners. You could see whether the local council might be able to help as well, but I just don't quite think we're into an emergency situation. But I think you're pointing out that there could be damage building
Okay.
up. You know?
Again, from my experience, things really have to be literally falling down for the council to take action.
Yeah.
Yep. Great. Well, thanks most for that. Just a reminder for everyone to keep sending your questions in. If we don't get a chance to get to them today, you can get in touch with us at info@underoneroof.scot. That's info@underoneroof.scot to send that question over to us, and we'll get a response back to you sometime in the next week or so. So we'll get to your questions whether or not we get to them in the session today or not. We also have we'll have a comfort break in about 10-15 minutes, chance for you to get up and stretch your legs, get a cup of tea, and so on. And during that break, we're going to have a video from Ross Mackay, who will be letting prospective tenement letting prospective tenement flat buyers know what to look out for. That'll be just like a 5-minute video that we have. Right, moving on. We've got a question from John, who says, I have a flat in a tenement where there's no handrail to the common stair, which is a safety concern. Is there any requirement for the owners to contribute to providing one, or would this be considered an upgrade, which has to be financed by whoever wants it done?
I think the problem about the tenement legislation is that it's never been expressed in terms of safety. So you can't look at tenement legislation in itself to help with this. Maintenance doesn't really include safety issues where there isn't anything there, as far as I can recall. So I think this is probably going to be an improvement, which requires all the owners to agree to it. I think it's just one of these clear things where the law ought to be changed. You might have to rely on various other bits of common law and health and safety. Paul, what do you reckon on this in terms of, non-tenemental legislation, general legislation?
Again, starting point, if it's a listed building, you'd have to have listed building consents. That apart, it might be something that would where I've seen it carried out. It's been where there's been somebody who's had mobility issues that lives in a flat that needs to be accessed. It's generally been in housing association flats that I've seen that, so that the ownership issue hasn't arisen. I would think there wouldn't be, if it's for a particular flat in those circumstances, I would think, along with what you were saying, Annie, it's for the owners to agree, because after all, it could, if it's a narrow stair, it would be narrowing the width of the stair. It could cause an obstruction, which is unlikely because most tenement squares are wide enough. The stairs are wide enough to accommodate that. But I can't see there would be a requirement for the other owners to contribute. You would make the argument that yes, everyone's benefiting from it, but then what the owner's response would be, well, I don't need the handrail, so why should I contribute? I'm presuming from the way this is stated that if there is no handrail, then I presume it's a stair that has a spine wall, because a stair with an open tenement stair has got a handrail because it's on top of the balustrade. So some of the tenement stairs that have got a central spine wall between the two flats going up, some of them are quite narrow. So putting a handrail up might restrict the width of the stair, especially thinking at how the ends of the handrail are detailed so as not to create a hazard or obstruction to where the doors come off the landings. I'm thinking would building warrant be required in those circumstances? It's probably best for it to be under the radar as far as building warrant's concerned, but you've got to be aware that the handrail itself could cause an obstruction. You'd have to see the actual situation and have to make sure the handrail was detailed. Think about one of the things that can cause a hazard is the ends of the handrail. That can be clothing can catch on them, or people can injure themselves on it. So it's what they call a wreathed end, which is where the end is turned. At the end of the hand, it's a bit more expensive to manufacture. The end of the handrail is turned back in against the wall. Detail like that is important, but in terms of the requirements for contribution, I would think it's more about for the owners to consent, the majority of owners consent, but not to contribute. It would be my guess at it.
Yeah.
I'm not,
I think owners do have a liability general liability to maintain their property so that it's safe for people coming into it. The occupier's liability. I think that
goes for existing handrails. That goes for existing handrails and balustrades. So if you've got anything like the front of our own tenement where there's a really rickety handrail with lots of balusters missing that a child could easily fall into, yes, we owners are collectively liable for that, and it needs to be done. That still needs the consent of the owners to actually pay for something. So, but this is where factors come in and can act.
Yeah, they need to. But I think that's as much as we can say about that one. I think actually, sadly, the law is deficient in terms of health and safety. In terms of specific tenement legislation, you have to go to common law, occupiers' liability, and things like that.
I'm just realizing though there is a way I hadn't read this. Was it could be that it is a handrail to the open part of the stair that is missing. In which case, that is if it's that, because I have seen plenty of tenements where that's the case. Part of the handrail is missing, where it has been there, and if that is the safety concern, then that certainly is something where it would be the owner's responsibility. Yeah. I hadn't read it that way, but I think I realised that could be what's meant here.
Yeah, if it had been there previously, and it's been taken away because it was in poor repair, it's a maintenance issue. If it was never there in the first place, then it's improvement, and it requires every owner to agree.
Yeah. Great, thanks both. We've got another question from David. At what point is repair considered cosmetic beyond the building fabric? Is there an obligation to contribute to cosmetic repairs? Or put another way, if the majority want to spend beyond what is required to make sound the building fabric, does the minority also have to contribute to this additional expense? An example could be painting the entire common stair when only the ground floor requires such attention. Annie, I'm sure you can handle this one.
Yep. Okay. So painting the common close is considered a maintenance issue, and so that's a majority decision of all the owners. So if the majority agrees that you should paint the whole of the close, then I'm afraid you have to go along with it. People have different levels of thought about what is cosmetic and what isn't. Most owners are not going to want to spend a lot more than they have to. I would be surprised if they're suggesting the whole close is painted when, people feel generally it doesn't need to be. So, yeah, but close painting, that is maintenance.
Great, we've got another. We'll nip through a couple of more before we get to our comfort break. We have a question from Marion, who owns a tenement flat, and they are getting a building condition survey carried out shortly, and the factor is asking for payment. We know there is one owner who is reluctant to engage or get any repairs. What is the process to get things moving and action some essential works?
Okay, well, this is the classic enforcing repairs issue, isn't it? So just to go to the building inspection, carrying out inspections, it's maintenance, therefore it's a majority decision of owners that will take it forward, and any reluctant owner is obliged to pay their part. If they don't, you effectively, all the other owners have to share the cost between them and then recover that cost through other means, such as taking that owner to court if need be. And that would be exactly the same for any of the repairs that are found to come out of that. Is that they're all going to be, there may be one or two improvements. It's hard to imagine, but I think the majority of those repairs are going to be maintenance repairs, majority decision. The reluctant owners need to go along with it. pages on Under One Roof. Look up enforcing repairs and just follow them through and just keep going at it. Just don't give up.
Let's see if we can get one more done before our break here. We've got a question from Alistair. It says that the windows in the common close have been in poor condition for some time and might be even dangerous. The problem has been reported to the factors and they have been screwed shut, but nothing further has been done. Can we force the factor to carry out proper repairs? It seems to be a recurring theme today.
Yeah, so I mean, the factor should be organising those repairs. Now, it may be the factor has kicked this off and they've written to owners and they've not got any response from some owners. Just keep going at the factor, and if they really do not act, then use that complaints procedure as I highlighted at the top of the program. I think, you know, just how to go through the factoring complaints procedure. But it's a common repair. Everyone has to pay, majority decision.
Great. Well, what we'll do is let's take a 5-minute break, and what we'll do is we'll come back from that. Take a stretch your legs, get a cup of tea. If you haven't had a chance to, we've got a poll open around, do you think that there needs to be a larger focus on safety in tenement legislation? So we've gotten some responses back from that. Most say yes. So put your answer in on that, and then we'll show that video now on buying and selling, and then we'll come back in about 5 minutes time and take more of your questions. Thanks very much.
Ross, thanks for joining us today. First question I've got for you has to do with buyers. What is the best practice? What should buyers of tenements be looking out for?
They should be looking out for things to the extent that you see in any property, primarily condition. Is the property in good order? Has it got 4 walls and a roof? And make sure it's not falling down. For that purpose, looking closely at the home report, which all sellers have to provide as a starting point for any purchase. Home reports are great, but they do have certain drawbacks. Particularly, they do not give a full picture of tenemental repairs or the condition of a tenement, and roof is the one particular point there that causes concern. Surveyors won't go on the roof, and therefore the most we'll probably do is say from ground level, with a set of binoculars, the roof looks okay. If I was buying in a tenement, I would certainly want to have an independent roofer or similar contractor get on the roof to have a look at it and just check it's going to be satisfactory for the expected ownership period that you're going to have for that property. Roof repairs, stating the obvious, can be very expensive, particularly in older Victorian tenements, which we still have throughout the country. And really you want to be forewarned in that regard wherever possible. So if I was looking at a tenement flat, I'd be having a good poke about, not just on the flat itself, but also the tenement. I would have a look at the condition of the common stair. I try and look at the cupola, the back door to the drying green or old garden ground going into the tenement, and try and get a feel that it's a well-maintained, looked after building. Your flat could be perfect, but if you're within a block that needs redecoration, roof repairs, rot repairs, you could be, buying yourself in for some trouble there. So have a good poke about the whole building and try and get a feel for its overall condition. I say the home report will give you assistance in that regard. Linked to that, you want to know about the history of common repairs generally. I would always ask the vendor, when was the building last repaired? What was repaired? Were repairs paid for promptly by the co-owners? Was there any issue about non-payment by some of the co-owners? The issue of common repairs is a thorny subject, and you would want to make sure that all owners within the tenement building are responsible and pay their share when required. Too often you find that there is a missing share element in the building, which can either delay or increase the cost of repair works. So just ask the question of the vendor as to what is the history of the building in that respect. Find out what has happened in the past and allow for it when you're buying this new property. Similarly, ask about the co-owners, your future neighbours. Are there already existing tenants in the stair? Are there existing HMOs? If the common stair has a high percentage of rented properties, that's well and good for an incoming landlord owner, but it can tip the balance in terms of repairs and maintenance. There's a happy balance to be struck there between owner-occupied properties and let properties to ensure that there's ongoing maintenance, particularly in the absence of a factoring or manager arrangement, which is often the case in, again, the Victorian tenement situation, and certainly out with Glasgow. Glasgow has a good history of property managers being appointed, but out with Glasgow it's not so good, particularly in Edinburgh. You also want to know what is the history of the co-owners in terms of antisocial behaviour. It's not something that's going to be covered by the contract, but you would want to know, for example, why is the vendor selling? Are they selling because of noisy neighbours? Are there people upstairs having a party every second night? Is there someone in the stair who causes problems? You have to ask the question and find out. You might not get an honest answer, but ask the question, because if there is antisocial behaviour, it will perhaps not depress the value of the property immediately, but long term it could cause a lot of aggravation and difficulty for you, particularly if you have incoming tenants yourself who regularly complain to you about the issues in the common stair. Is there a block insurance policy? And is that reasonable? Is that well priced? You need to know all these things to factor in the ongoing running costs of the property, whether you're going to be a landlord investor or simply an owner occupier. How much will it cost to run that property? And these external factors are important.
So hope you're at a chance to welcome back, and hope you had a chance to take a little break and stretch your legs. We've still got a number of questions here that we're going to get through in the next half an hour or so, or 20 minutes or so. So please keep sending them on. We've got a question here from Kenneth, and Kenneth says that their owner occupier above their property, which is rented out, has a water leak in the waste pipe running in the ceiling cavity, or their floor cavity, depending on how you call it. They asked the plumber to check, and the plumber could not find anything. We approached our insurance company, who authorized inspection work. We then got part of the ceiling taken down to find the problem, as upstairs said they could do no more. We found the leak in the waste pipe, and our insurance will cover replacing the ceiling, painting, and decorating, but not the replacement of the waste pipe and joints. The upstairs owner says to get your insurance to contact her insurance. However, we have excess that we will lose and assume her insurance will not cover the waste pipe. She said the pipe is in our cavity, so there's nothing to do with her. What can we do to force her to take responsibility of her leaking pipe and the related damages? So a bit technical, but do we have any thoughts on that, Paul or Annie?
I want to kick off on the waste pipe issue. Yeah.
I'm just rereading it.
Well, I can kick off on the insurance issue then, and maybe Paul can come back on the question of the actual waste pipe thing. The insurance issue is going to be that the excess is paid by whoever makes the claim, regardless of whose responsibility the actual damage is. It doesn't seem right, but that is how it works. But you could claim that cost from that owner, because if the damage has come from their individual waste pipe, I think that is their responsibility for causing damage to your property. So I think if you pick it up through your insurance, that other owner's doing very well, aren't they, really? But claim the excess from them. And if you need to take them to the small claims court, now called simple procedures, there's plenty of advice on Under One Roof about doing it.
Paul, do you have any thoughts on?
Nothing to add to that. I'm just thinking that if it's 110 mil, if the leak is in the 110 mil waste pipe, then that pipe is the common stack running through the, I would think, or it's carrying it's actually carrying a toilet waste into the common stack. It's whether it's whether the leak is occurring in pipework that is communal, or whether the pipework is private to that flat. You'd have to see more detail of what's actually happening in the building. It sounds like it's a connection in the upper flat, and therefore that householder's responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me as if it's individual. I think it would only be common if it were the whole common stack, and that would be running vertically rather than horizontally, I think.
Likely to, unless there's some strange offset.
Someone bending it,
which does happen sometimes. But, and that's where the problems occur, always where there's but it sounds, like from what it's said here, it looks like it's a connection to the pipe or a junction.
And that's individual responsibility as far as the common stack. So I think it is up to. It sounds like it really is up to that owner. And this comes up so often. I mean, it's all of these leaky pipes that are causing insurance claims to go up generally. I mean, this is what the insurance brokers are saying to us. Since they've had all of these push fittings, there's so much water damage that everyone's insurance premiums are going up, which I'm sure everyone who's listening in to this has noted.
Great. Well, thanks, both of you. We've got a question actually that has come up around energy efficiency, and we're going to be doing a webinar in 2 weeks' time on the 9th, I believe it is. Yes, on the 9th at noon on the question of energy efficiency, tied in very much to COP26 and everything that's going on this month. Around the issue about climate change. But the question we've got here has to deal with new types of heating systems. And someone who says they live up on the 3rd floor of a B-listed tenement. This is Sarah. She said she'd love to use or be able to install a ground or air source heat pump, but has noted that is very unrealistic given the troubles of both of those in the context of tenements. Are there any alternatives? Maybe we could, and if you could, or both of you actually, Paul, just touch a little bit on those two systems and what makes them troublesome for tenements.
Okay, can I lead on this one? Because it's something I've been looking at for various people recently. Air source heat pumps, on the face of it, are a good alternative to and promoted as a good alternative to a gas combination boiler, and they're sort of marketed in that replacement market. Which the trouble that it strikes me that the trouble with that is it works so long as the property is well ventilated as an alternative to a gas combination boiler, or another any other boiler for that matter. But they tend to work on a lower temperature differential across the flow and return. So they require they often promoted as ideally working with underfloor heating, which gives a greater surface area to where the heating comes off. Not practical always. Yes, it's achievable in a sort of with a great many other sort of sacrifices in terms of cost and within parameters that aren't going to be there in a building with multiple ownership for underfloor heating. So you're looking at larger radiator sizes being a likelihood. The other factor which pushes it in that direction is they work. The heat pumps, I think, work best where you've got a well-insulated building, and though there's lots you can do to improve the insulation of a tenement, you're not going to get up to the levels that you'll have that will be demanded of a new build construction, and you might not get the warmth that you're looking for all year round with that. I don't know if, I mean, it's something where it might well be feasible, but I would have thought the other thing that has come through from looking at the sort of extreme end, if you like, but where things might be going towards how sort of passive house constructional methods, which again, it's looking at new buildings, and again, that is being looked at in terms of a retrofit approach, is that the more you get to not needing to heat anywhere, that's a flat or a property or a house, the air source, the heat pump there's been more and more promoted where you've got a house that's nearly passive and it's nearly not needing a heat input. And the nearer you get to that, you ask the question, well, electrical heating is much greener than it was, supposedly, because it's all coming from renewables. Why bother with the additional technology of an air source heat pump where you could just have background electric heating if you are going to insulate the home well? That, I don't know, it's a debate to be, you're on mute, Annie. Annie, you're mute.
Trying to get there.
Oh, that's good, sorry.
I'm there. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, apologies. The lighting here means I can't actually see my screen. Either you can see me or I can see the screen. We can't get them. Yeah, there's been quite a lot of debate about these air source heat pumps. Do you know, my feeling is that people have got these things and they want to sell them, so they keep promoting them. It's a bit like people have got UPVC double glazed windows to sell and they keep promoting them. And everyone keeps thinking, well, that's going to be the way forward because they keep hearing so much about it. And I just don't think we're there with either of those with tenements at the moment. I think stone-built tenements are going to take a long time to get to the stage where there's going to be something you can just bolt on, which is going to solve the whole problem. They're just not like newer buildings. They're just too leaky to make a sort of a low energy source of heating work at the moment. So I think you really just need to, if you've got a gas boiler, just keep going with it at the moment. I think you've got till 2030 before they all have to be taken out. So you may just have to keep going with the most efficient one of those as you can at the moment in terms of bits of kit. But what you all ought to be thinking about is this of the fabric first approach. So making sure that the whole building is dry, you know, that first of all, you aren't making a wet building because wet buildings are cold buildings. So get your maintenance sorted. If you're doing any big projects in your tenement, think about what insulation you could add at the same time as you're doing those big repair projects, because it will always be cheaper to do energy efficiency works when you're doing other repairs. If you're an individual, you could think about doing some individual lining of your walls, but you've got to do that carefully to make sure you maintain enough breathability that you don't cause other damp problems. I think fixing drafts is the best thing that people can do at the moment while we're getting everything sorted.
And if, as I see that Sarah's in the third floor B listed tenements, now I'm guessing that the third floor might be the top floor.
Could be.
And there could be an opportunity there to get or improve any loft insulation. If there's no loft insulation, get some loft insulation up there. Unlikely to have resistance from the other owners if you go ahead and do that yourself. If it's just for insulating your own property, it's not something that it wouldn't be a common expense.
It is actually, Paul. It was one of the things that was added by the Climate Change Act back, early 2000s. Was insulation was added as a maintenance item, so that the majority of owners could agree to it. But I just feel it's all very woolly. It really does need to be sorted out properly to make it quite clear where the responsibilities are with these things. And I think probably with a listed building, you're never going to be able to put external wall insulation on there. So I think it's probably going to end up boiling down to each of the individual flat owners lining, you know, their own external walls in some way that suits best the the actual structure and maintains the breathability of the building. And then fixed draft. I'm sure we'll be talking about that on the 9th, Mike.
Yeah.
We've still got a number of questions, so I thought we'll do is we'll just keep cracking on with them. And if you if you do have questions, if you do have any questions that you'd like to get in, please drop them into our chat room. And if we don't get a chance to get through them today, please just drop us an email at info@underoneroof.scot, and we will get a chance to answer them in the next week or so. So we've got, let's go on to another question from Lucy. And Lucy, she's gotten in touch to say, we are in a complicated situation as we need urgent repairs to the stair lighting and front lock due to the following. 2 flats in the building were recently sold in the summer, and the land register is not yet updated with the new title sheets. I need to find out the date of entry to know if we need to pursue the old or the new owners. Another bit of this is 1 flat. I cannot find any information on who the owner is, and they have not responded to any attempts to contact them. We have 12 flats in the building. Only 10 are listed on the land register, which makes me think that this particular flat may still be on the Sassine register. And 1 flat is rented out, but only the landlord's name is listed on the landlord registry and is unfortunately quite a common name in Scotland. If you can offer any other advice on trying to trace down these owners, as they are keen to do the repairs ASAP.
Okay, so the landlord, you've only got his name on the landlord register. Ask the local authority to track him down for you. I think there ought to be more detail there than that, but the local authority should be able to help you find that landlord. You can still get information about ownership of properties if they're on the Sassines register, but generally speaking, everything that goes through as a recent from the 2000s onwards sale should be recorded on the new land register. As a property is sold, it gets entered on the land register. So have we got a flat which hasn't been sold for the past 20 odd years? Is that what we're talking about, Mike, in one of these flats? So I couldn't quite see the question or catch all of it.
I don't think it got to that detail, though. I think, yeah, I'm afraid.
Okay, and then we've got 2 flats which have sold recently, but where they can't get details about the new owners to get the date of exchange. I would, if these were sold via an estate agent, can you check with the estate agent when the sale was made and try tracking down that way? I know it does take quite a few months for things to come through in the register of Sassines, and no doubt longer now post-COVID than it was previously.
Okay.
I think I gather this is Edinburgh, where there isn't the thing of factoring and everything. So I suppose coming at from a Glasgow point of view, think it's quite. I wouldn't like to think of having 12 flats in the building and not having some factoring organisation. It's quite a difficult job for self-factoring when you're that many owners.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking if it's Edinburgh, the Edinburgh Shared Repairs Service may be able to give you a hand here. If it may be the council tax information has got updated, whereas the register, the land registers haven't. So try contacting Edinburgh Shared Repairs Service and see if they can help you. That they do have an arrangement where they will contact people via the council tax list if it's a repair that's needing done. So I would have a try at them, see if they can help in this situation.
Great. We've got a question from Justine, who asks, are factors obliged to give details of factoring fees and repairs to prospective buyers?
I don't know if they have a duty to, but most will. And most do, because they actually want owners who are coming into a property aware of what's needing done. So I don't think it's a duty, but I think it's common sense. And the large majority of factors will respond to the kind of queries which owners or conveyancers put to them on this kind of topic? I mean, I assume this is someone who's buying a property, Mike, rather than someone who's trying to sell and hoping that the factor won't reveal what repairs are required in a property.
I mean, the major item in a factoring bill is buildings insurance, and I think that's something that a purchaser would. Obviously, it varies from year to year, but I can't see any reason to withhold that information. If you.
I understand that. Well, one of the the Justine, who asked, actually was one of the persons that brought up that question. He works for the Scottish Empty Homes Partnership and wanted to jump in on the question. So let's see if we can bring Justine into the conversation. Justine, if you are there, I'm going to try to bring you in here briefly. We've never done this before, so we'll just give it a shot and see how it works here.
Good for Justine risking it.
Let's see. Make a presenter, do that. Maybe I'm having a little trouble getting to it. Maybe Jazz, who's helping us out in the background, might be able to help us out and get Justine in on the conversation. In the meantime, what we'll do is we'll go on to another question and then come back to it. We've got a question from from Graham. He was looking into any possibilities of grant funding for repairs to traditional pre-1919 sandstone tenement flats, including stonework repairs, roofs, along with other repairs. Where would be some places, Annie, that you would be able to find, look into possibilities for grant funding for repairs or even loans?
There's not an awful lot coming through local authorities unless you're in a conservation area. Mm-hmm. And then you're really looking for local projects such as conservation area regeneration schemes, CARS, they're known as, used to be Townscape Heritage Initiative schemes. You could try those. Also, if you're in a historic building, see if your local conservation trust has any kind of funding. Conservation trusts in most of the major cities in Scotland, so Aberdeen City Heritage Trust, Glasgow City Heritage Trust, Edinburgh, it's the World Heritage Trust. I believe they've got the Perth and Kinross Heritage Trust as well. Have a word with them, see if any of them are, if you're lying within the area in which they have got powers to offer grant. And then the other thing you might be able to get to is the HEAPS equity loan scheme, if you're going to be carrying out any energy efficiency work alongside the repair work. But you also need to have a property which is in a pretty low council tax band for that to work. Again, details on Under One Roof. Look up, it's just HEAPS, I think, HEEPS, Home Energy Equity Pilot Scheme, I think.
Yes. Looking, I mean, this is Shettleston Housing Association, so it's a particular area which, and I'm not aware of any, certainly any CARS status that Shettleston's achieved compared to, say, historically Parkhead, and these things run their course and then stop. There's if it's all housing association flats within that they're dealing with, I imagine in Shettleston the profile would be a mixture of privately owned and housing association if they're pre-1919 ones in their stock. I would think looking at private sector council grants, that's a fund that you're always being told that it's drying up, but then it depends on the building, and it's completely surprising. It's worth approaching Glasgow City Council, whoever is the person that haven't been involved in one that's been funded through that in the last couple of years. But certainly worth speaking to the council, the housing, the relevant bit of
council. Yeah.
231 George Street. I'm trying to remember what they it was private sector grant that used to be called.
Yeah, the private sector housing. It's always worth asking the question and seeing whether a local authority can help, but I wouldn't be too optimistic.
No, you'd have to have all of the owners, or at least the possibility of all the owners being in agreement. That's a starting point, really.
I wanted to welcome in Justine. Thanks for joining us actually today. You work for the Scotland's Empty Home Partnership. Maybe you could tell us just a little bit about that, and just follow up a little bit with some of the conversation we had about tracking down those missing owners.
Hi there, sorry to muscle in. It's just when the issue of empty homes cropped up there. So I work for the Scottish Empty Homes Partnership. We're hosted by the housing charity Shelter Scotland and funded by the Scottish Government. And our primary aim is to encourage more of Scotland's 47,000 long-term private empty properties back into use. And I work on the advice service section of the partnership. So we do get, as you can imagine, quite a lot of queries from neighbours concerned about empty properties. And in flat situations, communal repairs does come up quite a lot, because although we know that the presence of an empty property in a block doesn't prevent essential repairs from being carried out, because all you need is the majority agreement, what we sometimes find in reality is, if it becomes a finance issue and then other owners are, out of pocket for a repair, particularly if they can't trace an owner unless the local authority has a missing share scheme, as you mentioned, Danny. So it was really just to reiterate, if there are any neighbours and blocks out there that are concerned about an empty property in their block, then certainly their local authority empty homes officer, if there is one, or indeed our advice service, could provide a bit of information about what can be done to try and trace an owner.
Our staff have been great in helping people trace and track down owners, and obviously they've got access to all the resources, not just the register, but also the council tax register as well, haven't they, Justine?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, an empty homes officer's first port of call would be a council tax register, and as you say, that's likely that might be more up to date than the Register of Scotland information online. But also, a snag we sometimes find is that the onus is on the council taxpayer to update those records. So sometimes they're not always up to date. So we are at the mercy of the limits of the information that's out there, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I have heard some of your officers talk about sort of tracking people down using these air hunters.
Yes, some of the local authorities do have permission to use tracing agents. Obviously, they have access to other records under GDPR agreements and can assist the local authority sometimes when they've drawn a blank, using all their own internal records.
And of course, what owners can do is, if you've got a court order, you can put a charge on the property. So you may have to pay out and pay the builder yourself, but you may be able to recover the money by putting a charge on the property, so that when the property is sold, that money has to be repaid to you. It's a bit long term, I'm afraid, but it's better than nothing.
That's right. Well, Justine, thanks so much for joining us today. And I think what we'll do is we'll get in touch to maybe bring you back actually for a longer session where we could talk a little bit more about this and give people to have more direct questions around sort of empty homes and what they can do about that. So thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you. That would be great. Thank you.
Cheers, Justine.
Bye.
Thanks.
So we've got a few more questions I'd like to get to from Meredith, who says that we have a new owner-occupier in our block of 6 flats who has carried out multiple works in our communal areas without consulting any of the owners or asking permission of them in the 2 months since moving in. They provide a number of examples of the things that they've done, but lots of it involves running cables from his flat down the walls, over the walls of other neighbors, installing power points. He's also cited a number of other things, basically. So, but they all add up to the issue of issues in somebody doing stuff in communal areas without actually consulting the rest of the building. Due to these issues and behavior, so far we are concerned that he might decide to go ahead with some other work that he wants to do anyway, despite it being communicated that they didn't want to go through. So he had said that he had let the building know he'd received planning permission to knock down part of our wall and put up a private parking space in our communal garden. We have since found out through all individual writing to the council that he claimed on his application that we had all been aware, informed, and given our permission, on none of which was true. The council is now aware of this. Was not the case, so withdrawn the provisional permission to drop the curb. They're worried he's going to go ahead and do it anyway. Do you have any advice on what to do to prevent this from happening, how to proceed if it does go ahead?
Well, I think it's hard to actually prevent people from doing something. I think you probably have to wait till they actually start doing it and then jump on them very quickly. But you know, the communal back garden, just check your title deeds and just make sure that exactly where the boundaries are. But it's communal, so he doesn't need all owners' consent to go and do that. Maybe you could just write to him and just say that. And if necessary, try getting a lawyer involved in this, you know, and just get them to write the letter. It maybe that has more effect on someone who's obviously got a rather maverick attitude to things. But you know, if necessary, you might end up taking that person to court to get them to reinstate the wall and get out of it.
I was thinking from the examples that have been given that it points that I would certainly be concerned that from that background that the person would go ahead and just do things without permission. And yes, I would have thought getting some legal protection. You want to feel that you're safe and not threatened in your own house. And it strikes me that someone is very much, if not being threatening, they're showing their size by the actions that they've taken. And the council, from experience, they don't seem to be that willing to enforce. So if it comes down to what you think would be a council enforcement issue, that they really rather, the councils I've come across don't really like, unless it's absolutely necessary or building control matter, but certainly if it's a planning matter, they really don't do the enforcement side of it.
Yeah, I mean, councils just don't have the resources that they used to have for doing all of these things, do they? Which is why I was suggesting maybe, you know, a legal letter to him pointing out that he is not allowed to do this might be the best step you could take. And also just saying if he does, then you will take legal action. And I'm sure a sister could wrap that up very nicely in all sorts of correct language that would say this, but still make it quite clear what your intent is.
And it puts distance between yourself and the neighbour, having it coming through a lawyer.
Yeah, and if it's all of you as well, it's much harder for anyone to be seen as being any kind of target. Paul, though, I was a bit concerned about all of these cables, because although owners do have a right to fix cables to parts of the wall, some of this sounds like it's a bit lethal, or could be a bit lethal.
It's difficult. It's taking power outside the confines of his own flat. And
what's
indoors and what's it's
I'm not quite sure what the route would be, whether building control would pick up on that because of the safety issues of just power running around. I mean, owners could, you know, in general, owners could start
through the communal loft.
Yeah, I mean, in general, owners could start thinking about whether they could provide some kind of power access to people who've got electric cars. I mean, you know, that's something which all of us might need to be thinking about at some point in the future. And if you did put a metered point in, you know, it may be something which, it's an improvement to put it in, and you all need to agree to do it.
There's grant availability as well for. Difficult to do in a flatted situation, but there's grant availability for electric power points. A few people there's a couple of jobs that I've done looking for planning permission for alterations involving electric charging points. There are particular hurdles they have to meet. I think go online to Energy Savings Trust to see what grant availability there is at any particular time, because these grants appear then disappear when the funding runs out time and time again. But there's new funding comes in, and it's cool. So that would be as a separate. That's really a side issue. But certainly there's a thing here of running electrics out with the confines of his flat through communal areas and putting installations in communal areas. This is all stuff that would require an electrical certificate, to my mind, because going beyond the domestic, which would be covered by building control. So that would certainly be something that could be raised with the building control on the enforcement side as a member of the public. How soon you get response, I don't know.
Well, we've gone a little bit over time. I think we'll do one more, and then we'll call it a day for this month's question and answer session. This is a question. It sort of reflects back to the last one that we did, so it's a nice follow up from the topical one we did on buying and selling flats. The webinar for which you can check out. Jazz will post a link to it in the chat room if you're a landlord that's interested in buying or selling flats. She can provide some, you can take a look at the webinar that we did just a few weeks back where we had a couple of experts talking about the things to be looking out for on that particular issue. So the question is around selling a flat. And it says that if a tenement has an environmental notice served on the property, for example, refuse buildup or a broken gutter, does this impact on the sale of the property? The issues have been resolved, but remain open on the public information register due to poor administration from their council. Please advise on how to proceed in this situation. The notices are referred to as abatement notices by that person's particular council.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think this would have an impact on the sale of a building. I mean, if nothing else, it may be that you've got people who are buying who look at this and say, well, look, this sounds like this place is a bit shambolic. They've never got the whole refuse situation sorted out. It may be resolved now, but it might come back in the future. I think people would be very cautious on that. However, if the problem was caused by the owner who is leaving, or by owners who have previously left, or by tenants who have now left, then the person who is selling should point that out to people who are looking around to buy that flat. But yeah, I think it would have an effect, even if the notice had been rescinded. I think it would still come up in the history of the property somewhere.
Is there anything, Annie, that you're aware of that you could do to expedite it, those notices being removed? Is it just a matter of just getting hold of the council and just?
I think you could certainly ask the council if they would make a point of trying to get those notices removed, because you are trying to get the property sold. Just see previous notes about local authorities being very short of cash and just running around everything, trying to keep up with what's going on. It's a difficult time for local authorities generally, but keep asking, and ask your local councillor. I mean, often, officials will take their priorities as councillors ring them up and say, my constituents coming up to me, deal with this, please. If you have to, try it that way.
Great. So I think what we'll do is we'll call it a day here. Big thanks to all the people that got sent in questions. Today, we run these once a month, so we'll be doing one at the end, the last Tuesday in November for the next Q&A. We'll also, like I said, be having a webinar on the 9th on the question of issues around energy efficiency that we'd encourage you to join us to find out more information about how to make your flat or flats that you own energy efficient. And I'd like to thank Jazz for helping us out in the background and making everything go smoothly. And of course, to Annie and Paul for joining us today and taking on questions.
And Justine as well. Was it great?
And Justine as well.
Yeah.
Great. Well, we look forward to seeing you all very, very soon. And until then, good luck. And we'll speak to you at the next webinar in a couple of weeks' time. Bye now.
Great. Thanks, everyone. We always enjoy it. Testing, but enjoyable.